Evening. Feedback. Man, welcome to Candid Conversations. I am your host, Craig. We got a candid conversation tonight with Merlyna Valentine. I'm looking so forward to this. She is an amazing person. Matter of fact, let me show you a little bit about her story before we get into this conversation.
Hearing the words amputation the first time. Hearing the words amputation the first time was a moment that I don't think I could ever describe it in words, but it was, okay, what are you going to do? Because you don't know anyone who's ever lost a limb, let alone all four. And then what will your life be like? And what will the people in your life have to do? And then immediately I went to, will I ever be able to be self-sufficient? Or will I always need someone? And then who will that someone be?
St. Rose Elementary School in St. Charles Parish is back at work after losing her hands and her legs below the knees due to infections from kidney stones. For 2 years, Merlyna endured numerous surgeries and nearly lost her life. Over time, she learned to walk on prosthetic legs and use her prosthetic hands. Merlyna hopes that her story can help motivate others who are struggling through difficult times.
I went to the doctor and she sent me for a CT scan, and she said, it sounds like a kidney stone because from your symptoms, and it actually was, and it was a rather large stone. When I arrived at the 4th hospital by ambulance, that was the last thing I remember until a week later, because they put me into a medically induced coma as I was teetering between life and death. My right hand was removed in July of '08. And then the left hand in September of '08. So I actually went through 4 surgeries. Thank you. Good morning. Hey, my girl. Good morning. I thought about my kids at school and how much I'd always preach about perseverance. Never giving up, never saying I can't, and thinking, okay, you've talked the talk, but now you're going to have to walk the walk.
Wow. As you see, I took some of your videos and kind of chopped it up, but as I was making it, man, I was in tears. Like, my wife was like, who is that? I was like, that's my guest. Like man, amazing. I was talking to someone about your story. I was in the gym or something, man. It was just like, that's simply amazing. All right. So, this is Candid Conversation. So, I got questions that I want to know. So take us back to the beginning. The time before you found out. What were you doing before all of this happened?
So before all of this happened, and thank you, Craig, for allowing me to be part of your podcast today. I'm so excited. Always a pleasure to be with you. Before all of this happened and the tragedy happened in my life, I was an elementary school principal. I had a pre-K to 5th grade school, 650 amazing scholars, and I was, just living my best life. And I remember thinking that this was going to be an important and amazing year because we had gone through Hurricane Katrina. My school's right outside of New Orleans, Louisiana, and we made it through that tough times, those tough times. And that was my first year as a principal when Katrina hit. So after that, I said out loud to my staff, we made it through this year. We pulled together. And if I made it through this, whatever life has for me and life brings to me, I'm ready for it. I'm up for the challenge.
So were you displaced with Katrina? Did you have to leave?
No, well, I left. I evacuated for a couple of weeks, and then I returned because our area did not sustain a direct impact, and we became a welcoming district for many displaced students. My school alone took in 100 additional students that year. So you can see I already had survived as a first-year principal, something that I thought would be the most monumental thing in my career. Plus, I turned 40 that year, so I thought, hey, that's it. But 2007 happened, and that was a time where life showed me, you challenged me to something, and now I'm putting you to the test.
Wow. Okay, so now you're a second-year preacher, not preacher, but second-year principal, correct?
Correct.
And so, what happens? You don't feel well, or what happens?
So I was at Meet the Teacher Night, my favorite night of the year. I was welcoming all of my families back to a new school year, standing in the hallway, just that big smile, like the anticipation that I have for each new year. And I felt this pain in my side, nothing prior to that moment. And I said, whoa, that was pretty intense. I almost doubled over. And I said, I better get this checked out. Today's Monday and school begins on Wednesday, and I have to be here for the first day of school. I'm the principal. Never missed the first day of school in my career. So let me get this checked out. And that was it. I had that pain. It kind of lingered all through the night. And on Tuesday, I went to my doctor. We did a CT scan, and it was confirmed that I had a kidney stone. Now, Craig, if you're like me, I knew many, many people with a kidney stone.
That's amazing. Right.
So it's so common. I wasn't the least bit worried. I said, tell me what I need to do. Tell me the treatment plan, and let me get to my building on Wednesday morning. And it was intended that things were going to go as smoothly as that. You get treatment and everything would be okay. But that's not exactly how it turned out.
Wow. So now, so what happens next? Do the pain continue, or you go to school, and then what happens next?
So on Tuesday, after I was diagnosed and I was told it was a large kidney stone, and that on Friday I would see a specialist to figure out what they would do about it, and that if I had any issues prior to Friday, that to just give my doctor a call. Tuesday night I became violently ill. It was like the worst case of the flu ever. And I thought, is this the flu? Is this my kidney stone? Like, I had no idea. So I had my then 17-year-old daughter drive me to the first emergency room. I had to be feeling pretty badly to have her driving me almost an hour away. I live in a very rural community. And at the hospital, they treated me, couldn't figure out what was happening. They said it might be the flu. Here's some medication and follow up with your doctor. Before I left, I said, is this in any way related to the kidney stone? And they said probably not. And so I had all intentions on Wednesday morning of getting up and heading to school for the first day of school. But Wednesday morning, I couldn't lift my head off the pillow. I went to the second hospital. They worked on me there for hours, could not figure out exactly what was going on. And so they ambulanced me to the third hospital where I could get more specialized care. A larger hospital, and there, after many hours, things turned critical. I began to experience organ failure. I began to have episodes where I was having difficulty breathing, and that's when they decided that they needed to send me by ambulance to their main campus for critical care. At this point, they didn't know if I would make it or not. When I arrived at that fourth hospital, they took me out of the ambulance, and I heard the doctors looking, they looked rather puzzled. And then I heard them discussing with the nurses, her vitals are pretty grim. And I'm afraid if y'all had waited 30 minutes longer, she wouldn't be here. That's the last thing I heard. I was put into a medically induced coma for 7 days. And that night, my family was told I was given a less than 10% chance of surviving the night. That kidney stone blocked my kidney, and an infection was ravaging my body, and I was experiencing something called sepsis. And let me be quite honest, before it happened to me, I did not know what it was. I'd never heard the word sepsis, had no idea. And all I thought was I had a kidney stone and things were going to be okay. I was in that medically induced coma for 7 days on a ventilator, unable to communicate, to know what was happening. And I spent 3 weeks in the intensive care unit on that ventilator while my body tried to fight its way back from sepsis and the massive blood infection, major organ failure, my heart, my kidneys, my lungs all shutting down. And, thankfully, things didn't turn out the way man had predicted. I beat that 10% chance of surviving. You see me, I turned it into 100%. I'm still here and grateful about it. But I had a long and arduous recovery. It took nearly 2 years for me to come back to my quality of life and to get back to doing what I love to do. I spent 3 months in that hospital fighting and clawing my way back. And then I was sentenced to my bedroom for nearly the next 2 years while I recovered. And here's the crazy part about it all. I was sent home with not knowing that the sepsis and the treatments that were needed to save my life compromised the blood flow to my extremities. And so I was at home for 9 months while I watched the blood and the life slowly drain from my limbs. And then I could have the amputation. So can you imagine those first 9 months just watching a part of you just slowly die off? And so when people ask me about how do you make it through tough times, I've been there.
So let's back up for a second. Okay, so you're at your fourth hospital, and it's just you and your daughter. So your daughter is in the waiting room while this is going on? Like, is she the only one there?
No, it's my entire family. My parents both were alive then. I had family, friends. At the time, Tori was my boyfriend of a year. And so he was there. It was a massive amount of people supporting her because at this point, no one knew what the outcome would be at all.
Wow. Okay, so make sure I get this right. So you 7 days in the how many months in the hospital? 4? 3 months in the hospital. And so during this time you were in the hospital, what were they doing? Like were they just watching you to make sure that you were stable, or were they treating you, or what was going on?
They were absolutely. There were no surgeries, but they were giving me massive amounts of antibiotics and treatments because at this point the infection was still in my body, and they were, making sure that it would not continue to damage my organs or cause me to lose my life. So I was in there, just basically fighting for my life as they watched my vitals and treated me with as much as they could to possibly, I guess, sustain my life. In the beginning, it was very critical. It was touch and go. And then once things looked like they were more stable, the rest of the time, it was just to get me to a point where I would be able to go home and not be medically fragile.
So, but at this time, you still have all your limbs. Like, so, right. Okay, so you get released and you go home, but they tell you that your blood has been, what did you call it?
Compromised. The blood flow, yes.
Right. So, which means that really indirectly what they're telling you is that at some point you're going to lose your limb. Is that what that means?
Yes. So before I was sent home, a doctor came in and shared with me that because of the fact that blood flow was not going to my extremities and had not gone there in the way that it should, that eventually I would need amputations. But what they didn't know was how many amputations or how far the amputations would be up my arms and my legs. And so the time that I spent at home with the limbs still attached, they were fighting to save as much of my limbs as possible. Because if you're an amputee, you know that being a below the knee amputee versus an above the knee amputee is a much better outcome as far as being able to, I guess, regain your quality of life and learning to walk again. And so they were really fighting to save my knees and so that I could become a below the knee amputee. So I understood why I had to sustain that time of them, trying to figure out as much as possible what could they save of my limbs. And so I just had to fight through it and push through it.
So was the kidney stone big or something? I mean, what was it? Is that what made it block?
Yes. So there's a certain size that a kidney stone can be. to safely pass through and exit your body on its own. And mine was beyond that size. I had no idea. And at the time, they weren't quite sure of the exact size when things turned so critical so fast. And so it was never going to be able to exit my kidney safely. And it ended up just lodging itself in the kidney and blocking the kidney and allowing infection to just begin forming and ravaging all through my body.
And I'm not a medical doctor, so help me understand. How does it? Do you know how a kidney stone forms? Where does it come from? What?
So to be very honest, I'm like you. I am not medically versed in much of what happened, only from what I learned in speaking with doctors and nurses all through my recovery. But there are many different factors that can actually cause a kidney stone. And to be honest, sometimes they remove the stone and they analyze it to figure out if they can determine what caused it. But for mine, because when it was removed, they had to basically shatter it. There wasn't enough of the stone left for them to figure out what my stone consisted of or what might have been the reason it formed. Like it could be a calcium buildup. It could be a different, factor in everybody's body. But I never heard what was the cause of my kidney stone. It was my first kidney stone. Some people have kidney stones and it's a frequent occurrence, but this was my first, and I have not had one since. So just something tragic and unexpected, but it happened.
Is it more prevalent in women than men, or you don't? Because I've only heard of women have them. I've never heard of a man. Because men can have them also.
Absolutely. I had an assistant principal who, when I returned back to work, said, "You know what? I had one 2 weeks after you were gone, and it's the most painful thing I've ever experienced." But yes. So I definitely know. I don't know how much more frequent it is in females or males, but men can definitely get kidney stones as well.
Okay, so let's fast forward. So now you're released from the hospital, and you got 9 months in the bed to sit and watch your limbs turn to that black, what we saw in the video. That's how.
Yeah, absolutely.
So take us through those 9 months. That had to be rough.
So
couldn't get up.
Could not get up at all. Basically, I left my house once a week by ambulance or some medical transport to go to wound care. And that was my only outing. I saw the 4 walls of my bedroom and the very limited visitors that I could have because my body's immune system was very weakened by this whole ordeal. So I couldn't have a whole bunch of people coming in and out. And so that is when, Craig, if you're not a faithful person, I don't know how you can make it through something like that. I completely trusted and leaned on my faith and prayed with everyone that I could pray with and asked them to pray for me to have strength. And to be quite honest, once I realized that, having heard doctors say on 3 occasions that they didn't think I would be there in the morning when I was in the intensive care unit, and yet I watched the hours click on the clock and I'd wake up and say, "I'm here, I'm still here," I knew I was a miracle. And so knowing that God saved me and gave me a second chance at life, I decided before I left the hospital that whatever it would take for me to get back to the passion that I have for living life and for being an educator, I was willing to do it. And if I had to dig deep and fight, I was going to do that. And that's what I did. Every day I just told myself, you're going to get to choose one thing today, and that's your attitude. You can't change the outcome. You can't go back and wish this would go away. You can't revisit anything and change, the course of what happened to you. All you can do now is move forward and figure out how you're going to respond to this. And instead of letting it break me, I let it make me into the best version of me that I didn't know existed. And I said to myself, you didn't know how strong you were until being this strong was your only choice. And so now, for all those kids you told they could never give up and they can't say the word can, and they have to keep persevering, now's your chance. You're gonna have to walk the talk. And that's what I did. I just made a conscious decision every day to focus on my victories and not my troubles. And so gratitude saved my life.
So was this a progression, or did you, from day one, you had this attitude, or did you kind of find yourself slipping into depression, then you had to bring yourself back, or, was it, or did it from day one you just say, you know what, I'm gonna just make the best out of this?
So I can't say that I never had a moment where some sense of is this going to be, my life? Like, what is my life going to be like? Like, how do I move forward? I can't say didn't have moments, but Craig, I'm a firm believer, and I always was from a very young child, that I let things become a moment in my life. I don't let them become a life sentence. And so I said, I can have a moment. I can have this one moment where I'm saying to myself, what are you going to do now? Or how does this look 5 years from now? What are you going to do differently? How is this going to impact you? But I let it be a moment. And then I would say to myself, you know what? Live day by day. Be grateful for today. You're still here. And I think the fact that I wasn't supposed to make it, in the fact that 10% chance of living and I was still here, I couldn't help but be grateful every day. So before I left the hospital, Craig, I was pretty much at peace with everything that I knew I would have to endure to make it through this. And I very rarely felt any sense of sorrow for myself or self-pity, because I kept thinking, you're a miracle. So how can you feel sorry for yourself? You have no idea what God's going to use you to do in this world and how your story is going to inspire people. So let's just remember that. And so I didn't have those moments of depression because I was so grateful to be alive. And I think when you love life and you have a passion and a purpose in your life, it's pretty hard to feel sorry for yourself that you're still alive when you're not supposed to be here. So I didn't really have depression. I had moments where I would wonder and question, how would I move forward and how difficult it would be. And then I'd quickly tell myself, but you can do it.
How was the support from your staff at school?
That was the most incredible thing about it all. Students and families and parents and my staff and my teachers and my colleagues as principals, my district, my superintendent, like everyone sent messages and cards, and I had videos coming to me. I had all kinds of things just arriving at the hospital because they could not visit in person. I was kind of under this little quarantine kind of thing to keep me safe, but I knew everybody was thinking about me, and the people were praying for me. And everything I heard from my district, including my superintendent, saying, when you come back, let me know what you'll need to continue on this journey. Now imagine, they don't have a clue how I'm going to come out of this, but in the midst of it all, he's saying to me, let me know what I can do to make your transition back to being a principal happen. So it gave me this thing to look forward to every day. And so I can't thank anyone more than I can thank my family and friends, but also the people I was blessed to work with.
That's amazing. So who took, did you have a nurse, or who took care of you every day while you were at home? Was it your daughter or your then boyfriend, or who was actually there? Because if you can't walk and move, somebody had to take care of you like a baby.
Basically, I became a toddler again at 41 years old. But my daughter, here's the part that I didn't share. When I became ill that weekend, I was supposed to be bringing her up to LSU as her freshman year. My only child was about to start college, and we prepared for this for an entire year, like how distraught I was going to be about leaving her there, and how the parents are going to just break down and cry. And I didn't get to have that moment. I didn't even know if she made it to college because I was in that medically induced coma when she went off. And so she was away, and I told her, I don't want you to stop what you're doing. My parents at the time were in their 70s, both alive, both very, active and healthy. So they stepped in. And then Tori would come and help out as much as he could. He lived an hour away from me. And so he was in and out, giving them relief. And it was a group of very close friends that were there daily, that made sure all my needs were taken care of. And so I had this really strong support system. Both of my siblings and their families live in Dallas, and I'm in Louisiana. So, they couldn't be here as much as they wanted to be, but when they could, they, came down and tried to lift my spirits. But I just had this real strong support system between my parents, my daughter, and Tori, and they made that recovery possible. There was a home health nurse that came for 1 hour, 3 times a week. That's it.
Wow. Okay. And so now we're at the point where they tell you that you got to start getting some limbs removed. What were they looking for it to get to a certain point before they have to cut it off? Is that what they have to wait on?
Yeah. So basically, and I'm not, as you shared, I'm not medically versed in what each little process or step was to determine, but I had this amazing doctor who I went to high school with, who stepped in to help me on this journey. He was someone that I trusted more than anything. And so a team of doctors looked at my limbs, and they could tell once they decided that this was it, and that the blood flow had been compromised at this level, and that they could sustain life in the limb if they removed it at this point, then that's when I knew. And so first I had amputations of both of my legs at the same time. 2 months later, they amputated my right hand. And then 2 months later, they amputated my left hand. So in that short time period, I had those surgeries happen in progression because they couldn't do all of them at the same time. My body needed to recover in between those surgeries. They were pretty, intense. And so I also would like to have one hand to use while the other hand was healing. And so I was glad they did it that way in, increments, so that I could actually figure out how to do a little bit for myself, because I was using the computer and doing different things to keep myself occupied while I was actually recovering.
Any pain? Was it painful after?
Let's just say I gave birth to my daughter, and I thought by far that was the most painful thing, but so worth it because of what you get in the end. This was magnified by 10 to 100 times. There was pain every single day, and the pain was sometimes unmanageable. And so it took a lot for them to finally figure out exactly what I could do to help manage the pain. The pain didn't last an extensive long time after the amputations, but those initial days and maybe the first 2 weeks, it was extremely painful.
Okay, so how long were you amputated before you started trying to get the prosthetic?
Yeah, so that was the part about me and me being a go-getter and someone on a mission to regain my quality of life that took me learning a word called patience. I wanted to rush the recovery. And here's the crazy part. I didn't have anybody who could tell me how long exactly it would take me to rehab from all of this. Many people, many of the therapists that I met in the hospital said, I've never worked with a quadruple amputee before. And so it was uncharted water for many of them. And I had to dig deep to find somebody who had experience with both upper and lower limb amputations. I was ready. I wanted to get on my legs and to just get moving. But I had my amputations in 2008. They began in May. And I did not actually get up and try my legs until later on in 2008. And I wasn't really good at it until early 2009. That's when I began to become more comfortable with my legs. The hands took a little longer, but I was on a mission to return to my school in August of 2009. So Craig, what I did was I went to therapy 3 times a day instead of once a day. And I told him I have 6 weeks to rehab and get in these legs and figure out how to use them and get my hands working. And I want to be in that building in August, and I will be back in that building in August. I am determined. And my therapist believed in me and said, we can make it happen. If you're willing to put in the work, I'm willing to do what I need to do. And so I condensed 6 months of therapy into 6 weeks of therapy. In August 2009, I'm so extra, I didn't walk back into my building. I'm right outside of New Orleans, Louisiana. I danced and second line my way right back into that building as the principal once again.
Wow. I bet your staff rejoiced. I bet that was a glorious day.
I still can relive it and get goosebumps all over when I think about that first time I opened that door and I walked through those, halls and saw those shiny floors waiting for me to say, you're here and you're back. And it was just incredible. And the first day of school, I will never forget that. My students were, the most excited they could be. Many of them were there when I became ill, and they were still there because it was pre-K to 5th grade. So they knew what happened. They knew the journey, and they were as excited as I was just to have me in the building. It was a special time.
So what was the most challenging thing going back now as a quadruple amputee? What was the most challenging part of being a principal?
For me, this is a demanding job. Being a school principal is a very demanding job. And my building was 2 stories. It was massive. I mean, I had a large population of students that I needed to care for. And I think the most challenging part for me was the physical part, which was being able to have the stamina to last for 14-hour days, being able to get from one location to the other. Even though I was just learning to use my prosthetic limbs, I had to figure out how to do that efficiently so that I could get the job done. So I think the physical part took longer. The mental part of me being there and making decisions and being an uplifting person and inspiring my kids, that came easy. My staff was there. They supported me. Anything I needed done, they were willing to jump in. And for me, it was just building that stamina and that ability, because I worked 12, 14 hours a day. I didn't stop because of what happened to me. And so I had to figure all of that out. And once I'd say the first 3 to 4 months, it started to come much easier for me.
Wow. You know, I think humans, when we see someone with a condition like yours, we may not, like you see a blind person with a dog, you might want to help or try to help them. And sometimes they say, no, don't help them, let them, Did you get that a lot? Like people see your condition and try to overly help. Did that happen to you a lot?
I wouldn't say it happened a lot, because people were trying to figure out just what you said. What's the fine line? How do we walk this fine line? How much does she really want? Because they know I was so independent before. And so even in my home, my family was like, okay, what does she want us to help her with? What are the things she wants to try on her own? And so we got to know each other in my school building. We learned about each other. But I'll tell you this, if I dropped an ink pen and my students were around, there were 20 of them diving on the floor just so they could pick it up, because they did not want me to, for a minute, have to have, a need for something and they not fulfill it. So what I say is that my return built this culture of just celebrating our differences and not just being tolerant of them, but celebrating them. And, I created this culture where someone who was different, it made them unique and special, and it should be celebrated. And so I don't think that I had those moments where people went overboard in trying to support me. They knew I was an open book, and they would say, do you want some help with that? And I'd say, yes, you saw me trying to do that, right? Thanks. And so we got to a real good place. My staff was incredible. And I already had relationships with students and families and my staff. So everybody felt comfortable enough to say, hey, do you want some help with that? Or you got it? And I would be able to say yes or no. And it was great that I had that relationship prior to me becoming ill, because coming back, that transition was, much easier.
So did you retire, or just decided after that 1 year it was over? What happened?
So I went back in 2009. And I remained principal until 2013. In 2010, I was named principal of the year for my school. I was named principal of the year for our district. For my district, principal of the year for our region, and one of the top 5 principals in the state of Louisiana. And that was confirmation for me that I was in the right place doing the right work, and coming back was the right decision. My students let me know that every day. And in 2013, we had a new superintendent come on board, and she came over and said, hey, I'd like for you to come over and be executive director of all the elementary schools and supervise principals. And I thought to myself, in 2007, when this happened, I didn't even know if I could return to this work. And now she's asking me to step into a leadership position at central office, even though my first priority and my first love, the students, that's where I wanted to be. I wasn't quite sure. And then I said, God has never guided me wrong. And if I'm asked to step into a role, I have to take that leap of faith and just do it, and realize I can touch more lives now across our whole district. And so 2013 to 2016, I worked at central office as the executive director, and finished 30 years in education. See, something they told me I would never do. My doctor said there's no way you're going back to be able to retire. And I made the 30 years, and I said, you know what, that was the goal I set for myself. And that's when I decided it was time for me to move on.
I'm kind of puzzled, because the first time I met you, and I looked at you, I thought you was around the same age as me. Like, you keep dropping these numbers on me, and I'm 42, and you talking about you was 40 something back in '00s, and I'm like, I'm not gonna ask your age, but
I'm proud, Craig. I'm proud. I am 55 and ready to thrive. So yes, and I started out my education career at 19. So I've been on this journey a long time. I'm proud to be an educator. I will always be one. So yes, you're a baby to me. No, just kidding.
Well, listen, I thank you for those all those years in education, man. I do. I'm not an educator. My wife's a second grade teacher, but I commend you guys for the great work. I don't know if you saw. I was commending a lady on my page for doing.
Yes, I saw it.
I mean, because that's what it's all about, man. Like the more I do what you and I do with all the speaking with educators with power, the more I appreciate what educators do. And so, thank you for all your years, man. They should really. It's underpaid. They really owe you back pay because you guys underpaid. Okay, so then you retired.
Yes.
All right, and so when did the epiphany hit that I need to be out here at these conferences sharing my story? When did that epiphany happen?
So I don't think it was truly an epiphany. Like people say, I had that moment. So when I was out on my leave, and right after I had my legs amputated, I was asked to speak at a banquet for some seniors. And I thought, speak at a banquet. I was still in a wheelchair at that time, and I wasn't quite sure, was I ready to go out in public in that particular, time in my life. I was still trying to recover and rehab and just get back. And I said, you know what? I have a message now and a story to tell. So here's your chance. Let's see how it's received. Let's see if you can inspire people. And, the minute they wheeled my chair into the building, and this is the community I lived in, so everyone knew and was aware of my story. But when they wheeled my chair in, everybody rose to their feet and started clapping. So before I had to utter a word, I got a standing ovation. I mean, how awesome is that, right? Now how hard I have to work for those now. And so they wheeled me in, and just the fact that my presence, my existence mattered that much to that room, like a bug bit me. And I said, this feels pretty special that I love inspiring scholars and being in my building with all of my students and staff, but these are community members. These are people who are looking to me for inspiration and some motivation. And so this feels different and it feels good. And then I let that go. That was in like 2008. And, I'm always speaking in front of my staff and my students and giving those inspirational talks. And as I got to central office, I was asked to speak at different events. And so I started to really enjoy and see the impact that my message and my voice had in this world. And it was beyond being in a classroom where I was a second grade teacher for 14 years too. Kudos to your wife. I love her. And so it felt so good to be up there and to share this message. And I realized God left me here to tell this story. And it would be so selfish of me to keep it to myself and to only let the people in my inner circle or those in my community hear it. And I said, I feel like this is the next step for me. This is the next journey. And then schools started asking me about leadership and talking about how to create culture and climate that would impact student achievement because I'd been successful with that. And so it just kind of evolved, and then I fell in love with it because once I got to doing that, I said, this could be my next thing. I'm going to impact schools on a larger scale because now I can impact leaders all over the country. And wouldn't that be special if I get to touch children in every state, in every corner, in every school? So it kind of evolved, and then I fell in love with it. And by the way, Craig, I don't know if you know this, but you were the first national speaker that I met at my first national conference. And I just sat there and I was like, I've been following him on Facebook and I'm like, this is someone, and you were so personable, you were so friendly, and I expected you to be like, but no, you gave me tips right there in that room at my first little breakout session, 100 people maybe, and I met Principal Kafele that same conference, and I was like, two people I've been following and looking up to and saying one day. And they both were here and both took time to, say something to me, to deposit something into my little emotional bank to get me ready. So thank you for that. I'll never forget it.
I remember it. I remember exactly what you're talking about. And
Yes.
For those that's watching, the reason that's she made a point about that is because in our profession of professional speakers, consultants, everybody's not that friendly. Everybody's not going to share with you. Everybody's not going to take the time. Everybody really don't want to see you make it, because when she gets on, some people look at it like she becomes their competition, and some people in it for the money. I'm not in it for the money. The money is great. It's a great benefit, but that's not the reason. I'm just like you. I believe that God preserved me in my story to share with other people. That's the reason I'm in this. So that's why she made that point, because I ran into some of these people. They're on the same stage with you. They'll walk right past you like they don't even see you, and like they'll knock you over. Like it's a cutthroat business. All right. So now you're in the business. I know how it was for me trying to break through. Was it challenging to not to speak? You know, once you got there, you're speaking, you're in love with it. But I'm talking about, because this can be real political, this speaking thing. You know, superintendents bringing their best friend, buddy they play golf with and pay them a lot of money. And so how has the experience been as a professional consultant over the last couple of years? How has it? I know you love it. I know you get in speaking engagements, but was it challenging to break through? Is what I'm asking.
Yes, it was a lot of developing myself and paying attention and watching others and trying to perfect my craft, and saying that if I'm, given the opportunity to get in front of anyone, I don't want to go up there and not do my very best. But the strange part for me was that after doing that very first national conference, I did not expect to have much of, talk about me or things to just open up for me. But from that one conference, some doors opened, and 5 to 6 people were contacting me who happened to be in the audience to say, I want to ask my superintendent, are you available? And those things didn't just snowball into this, illustrious career where I could just go out and demand, to be on big stages. But things did happen quicker than I thought, because within a year, I was at schools all over the country and actually asked to keynote that same conference the following year in a different city. So I felt like, because of the experiences that I had in education, but also having a testimony, a story, a message that resonates with people, because everyone goes through something. Everyone will encounter a storm in their life. And so seeing me overcome this tremendous tragedy gives people something to hold on to outside of the education world. So I had a twofold message. And I think that happened to be the way that I could, kick the door open when they were trying to remain closed. So it wasn't this simple, easy thing. I had to work hard at it. I had to network and tap into people that I know and saying, what can I do? How do I do this? Take advice from people like you and those that I watch and aspire to be like Brian Mindler, Principal Kafele, Robert Jackson. I mean, I could keep going. But it was me putting myself out there, doing a lot of things for free at conferences where you actually pay to be in their breakout room. People miss that part. They think we get on big stages by magic. No, we pay to be in a breakout room, pay to go to the conference. And then from there, you're just hoping that doors open. So it's been not this difficult and, cumbersome task, but I do believe that it took a lot of hard work. Yes.
Yep. And I'm looking at my phone, you guys. I do want to apologize if it looks kind of blurry. I was telling Merlyna that I have 2 internet services in my home, and that one of them went down. And so I'm having to use the one that my wife, my son, my other son, I'm on the phone. So there's a million things pulling from it. So if it's not the normal quality, I do apologize for that. All right. So we're getting close to the end, but we got to talk about the significant other in your life. I saved it to the end for a reason. All right. So he was there before this happened. Is he still there now?
Of course. I mean, who would leave this, right? So yes, so we dated for 1 year when I became ill, and I fully expected, as I offered him his freedom, I remember as soon as they removed that ventilator tube from my throat, I said, you know, you didn't sign up for this. If you need to walk away, I completely understand. This is going to be a huge thing in you know, the future. So, and he silenced me and he said, you know, when I say I love someone, it's not only if they stay exactly the same. I'm here. And he left his city over an hour away. His family, his friends, his career, moved over so he could help my parents, my daughter, as being a caregiver. And then as soon as I could walk and return to my job, he got me through those things. He brought me to work every morning. He came at lunch to make sure I had everything taken care of, and then picked me up in the evening. So 3 round trips a day. But here's the big part, Craig. He said, what can I do to make this transition back to your career, which is what you want to do more than anything, happen? And I said, well, you got to help me look the part. I need to look like, you know, someone who's ready to be the principal. And I said, so you're going to be doing hair and makeup? And, you know, he gave me this look. First of all, he said, wait, you wear makeup? Because, see, I only let him meet the representative in that first year. He didn't get to know all these ins and outs. And now he's responsible for doing the hair and makeup and getting me to my job. And as soon as those things were on track, he said, will you be my wife? You know, this is something we're going to commit to do for the rest of our lives together. And so, yes, I married that incredible man. That's the part of the video that would be the ending, which is the love story. And we married in 2011. I walked down the aisle on my prosthetic legs and danced with him with my prosthetic hands. And we're on this journey together. He comes to every speaking engagement, wherever it is, because of course I can't travel without him, but because he wants to be there as my biggest cheerleader and support system. So he's here. He's happy to be here. We have an incredible life. We're on this journey together. And if people question love, we're trying to stand here as the shining example of unconditional love. That you can't just love people if things are going well or if things happen the way they should. You got to love through it all.
That is simply an amazing love story. And you're right, I saw it in the video. Unfortunately, this wouldn't let me put that big video in so I had to cut it up. I already knew the answer, but I actually met him when I met you for the first time.
Yes.
Very humble, soft-spoken, kind brother, just genuine, real people. And as I said, I've been doing this for 8 years professionally. It'll be 8 years in October. And you are one of the most genuine people doing this that I've met. You know, I think the first time I met you, you said, I'm coming to your session. I want to hear you. And you even purchased my book, you know, and every time I purchase a book, you're like, hey, Craig, where can I get the book? And I'm like, man, this woman is just simply amazing. So listen, we're running on about 50 minutes. I like to keep it under an hour. So this is what I want you to do. Everybody got an excuse. Everybody always, you know, make an excuse why they can't do this, why they can't do that. I want you to take a minute or two. I'm going to give you the floor. And I want you to just speak to those people that like to make excuses, those people that don't think they can, don't think they got enough money, don't think that they got the skills to do whatever. I just want you to speak to them and let them know that anything is possible.
So that's been the journey that I've been on. And it has been that in the face of what seemed to be the impossible, I set out to prove what's possible. To be on this journey has been a major blessing in my life. And there were so many obstacles, and I encounter obstacles every single day. There is something that I would like to do for myself that I'm unable to do, but I don't let that stop me. You see, the biggest storms in our lives happen, and they happen without warning, just like mine did. Change chose me. I didn't pick it. I didn't choose it. It happened. But let's remember that after the biggest storms come the brightest rainbows. And we have to be able to pick ourselves up, to embrace whatever happens, to embrace that change, and to say, how can I use it to transform me into the best version of myself? That's what I decided to do. I had to move forward being an example to not just the students that I was fortunate enough to be around, but to everyone that I encounter, everyone that hears my story. I am on a mission to let you know that you too can prove what's possible in the face of what seems to be the impossible. I could never let the tragedy be my defining moment. It would not be the reason why I would have an excuse to live a mediocre life. Instead, I decide those defining moments, those moments that would be life altering and life changing. And so can you. You can't change some things that happen, but what you can do is choose how you'll respond to it. And I will continue to say that it's your decisions that will determine where you go in life. It is not your situation, not your circumstances, not your tragedy. And everyone will go through some rough times. Let that be just a moment that you have to process, that you have to figure things out. But in the end, let's not let it become a life sentence. Let's not let it become a reason why we become bitter instead of better. That's what it's about, choosing to fight for what you want in life. I knew for a fact that this new life that I'm on, I remember the day I realized that I said, welcome to your new life, your brand new life. And I said, now, what are you going to do with it? I just need to remember that it is up to me how this journey will go and what my story will be about by what stories I tell myself every day. I talk about overcoming. I talk about what I've made it through. I talk about persevering, and I refuse to become someone who is defeated by this, to play the victim, the woe is me, to have pity parties because I'm victorious. I made it through. I continue to push through, and I will always be a model for others that perseverance is up to you. You have within you everything you need to be the best you that you can be. It's time to tap into that and unleash that superpower. I know I have.
And tell us about your book. What's the title of your book and where can they find it?
So I have two. I have this one. I don't know if you can see it. It's called Living Life Without Limits. And that's on Amazon. That's for adults because they need to know how to overcome adversity and embrace change and persevere. And then I have Daisy, the extra special flower, and that's for students and kids, elementary students. And it talks about how this flower lost 4 of her petals, but was able to still be a wonderful flower in the garden and blooming for all to see. And of course, that's my way of sharing that message with kids when I visit schools to explain what happened to me and how perseverance is something we all have.
And when do you do your live podcast?
I've slacked off a little bit. I used to be every single Monday. Right now I posted and I'm trying to get on schedule to where I do it the first Monday of the month and maybe the third Monday of the month. But with my schedule hopefully picking up and having live engagements return and getting some of my bookings to start coming in, I'm trying to make sure I'm ready to make that new pivot back into the live event space because virtual is great, but there's nothing like being in front of an audience. So I've been trying to make sure I'm preparing myself for all that's necessary.
And what is your website? So
my website is Shero, SHERO, SheroValentine.net. SheroValentine.net. And you can find out everything about me and how to contact me there.
And I want to say thank you. We tried to do this a couple of weeks ago. Didn't work out, but I believe everything is in God's time. Nothing is out of his order. So I say thank you. And I actually had an epiphany sitting here listening to you tonight. Like when I started doing this, it was really for me just to share my story. When I started speaking, me share my story. But now I've learned from tonight that it ain't just about sharing your story. It's also about helping other people share theirs as well. And it's just not all about me. Like, because, I went through a lot, but this is not you're sharing your story. I'm not the only person that went through something. And so I think God was speaking to me tonight. I've never been a selfish person, but I've never just really looked at it. I never really looked at this podcast as even a platform for other people to share their journey, but that's exactly what this is. And I'm just looking at some of the comments, and I really can tell that you've blessed a lot of people. So Corey Franklin said, "Can you put those books in the comment section?" So after we get finished, if you can go and just put your website and your books in the comment section. I think so.
Absolutely, I'll make sure to do that. I'm honored, and Craig, it is this definitely affords others an opportunity to share what we need to share to also impact lives, and you make this possible. And so I'm grateful for that, because I always say everybody has a storm, and we shouldn't be comparing our storms, and is that we're going to make it through these storms together. That's the important message from all of this.
Absolutely. And thank you. And if you guys are single, if you've never seen a daughter looks just like her, absolutely drop dead gorgeous. Like, so man, good genes in that family. So listen, my name is, hold on one second, really. My name is Craig Boykin. This is Candid Conversations. We have this show every Saturday, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you guys for tuning in. I think my next week, I'm going to go solo. I'm going to take the page from my like I'm going to bring my own message. I hadn't been doing it, but one Saturday I'm going to take time and kind of bring my own inspirational message. And then 3 Saturdays I interview the people. And then the following Saturday I'm going to have a police officer. He was also supposed to be on here a couple of weeks ago, but 2 police officers got shot in my hometown. And when that happens, all police on call, and so we're going to have he and I are going to have a candid conversation about what to do when you get pulled over by the police, and because that's a big issue right now. So I am also, like Merlyna, I'm a professional speaker. You can go to the website.com. I just released my new book. My 7th book is called Punishing Trauma: Scars That School Suspensions and Incarceration won't heal. And so in this book, I basically talk about how a lot of these kids that's getting kicked out, they dealing with trauma, but no one deals with it. If you don't deal with trauma, it's not gonna go anywhere. Trauma is not one of those things that you just gonna wake up and like, if you don't deal with it, it's gonna be there. It's gonna get worse. So Punishing Trauma, the book I released before that was called The Athletic Trap: Why African American Males Fall in Love with Sports. It's not a book about sports. It's really a compare and contrast on this is what sports offer young black men that's attractive. This is what education doesn't offer. It's one of those type of books. Great book. I got my autobiography called My Life, Your Inspiration. I got a book called My Life. Not My Life. That's my autobiography. I got a book called Right Motive, Wrong Methods: Teaching with Poverty in Mind. I wrote a book about how to be successful in college. I'm a high school dropout, 3 college degrees, and I figured out that college was a system, and anybody can navigate a college campus in America if you figure out how to work the system. And I also wrote a book called Masterminds with like 23 other people. And so again, thank you guys for tuning in every week. I have different people. We having different great conversations. You guys can go to my YouTube page. I think maybe about 20 other podcasts right now. Feel free to share them with people. I got Principal Kofele. I got one I did with about 11 different black male principals where we having so a lot of different podcasts on my YouTube page, which is Craig Boykin. Thank you, Merlyna. Hold on one second. Let me end the show. Don't leave. You guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you.